it's Mo. I wanted to talk today about my recently acquired books project that I started in 2022 and what the future of the RAB spreadsheet and the RAB project will be in 2023. RAB stands for recently acquired books, and I think the first thing that's worth saying is that I don't buy new books. I get all my books secondhand. I go to book sales, I go to library sales, I go to used bookstores, I go to thrift stores, I pick books up off the street, and I get them from little free libraries. Since starting BookTube, I noticed how many books I was acquiring. I've always acquired books because I always enjoyed reading, but when I kickstarted my reading in 2020 and I started my BookTube channel, I was getting so many recommendations, I was seeing so many books that I'd never heard of, and I started really picking up a lot more books. By 2022, I really wanted to know how many books I was accumulating every month, every year, and I decided to start my RAB spreadsheet, which is a spreadsheet featuring every book that I picked up in the year of 2022, where I got it, how much it cost, if I purchased it used, or if I found it, when I read it, etc., etc. We're gonna go over the whole spreadsheet soon. And then every month I did a recently acquired books haul so that you could see how many books I was acquiring with me along the way each month of the year. And the whole idea of this project in 2022 was not to limit the books that I got, just to see how many books I was picking up, because I had no way of telling. I couldn't judge how many books I had picked up in 2021 or previous to that. So this was to be natural, act natural, do natural, and pick up books where I saw fit, not restrict myself in any way, and see how many I actually acquired. We're going to look at the spreadsheet that will show you how many acquired, and we will talk about the consequences of that action and where it's leading me in 2023. Here is my 2022 to 2023 spreadsheet. I should say that I checked in with this spreadsheet in August of 2022, so I will leave that linked below. When we last checked in, obviously I was still collecting books. I was still in the middle of this project. We'll go over all the parts of this spreadsheet soon. The first thing to note is that every book that I picked up through the year of 2022 is listed on this spreadsheet. Now, some of the books that I got were gifts from my mom or my dad, and they weren't necessarily books that I was going to put on my TBR. So the main spreadsheet just has all the books that I was going to put on my TBR. I did also pick up books for my husband. I did pick up books that I ended up almost immediately unhauling. I did pick up books that were for my vintage collections. I did record those on the spreadsheet, but they weren't actually for my main TBR. You can see, looking at the spreadsheet, that it's divided by number of books, the date that I acquired the books, the title, the author, the location, the cost that I spent on the books, the month that I read them, a total amount of my expenditure, when I hauled them, so when I filmed my recently acquired books video or haul video, how many books I read each month just generally, and then how many books from the spreadsheet I read each month. And there's a lot of other numbers and things, but we're just gonna go through real quick and show you my grand total number of books that I acquired in 2022 was 393 books. In the year of 2022, I read 135 books, so not as many as I acquired, and if I continued to acquire at the rate that I did, I wouldn't be able to read all the books that I acquire in my lifetime. And that's not what we want. You can see, too, that some of the books are books that I read and they don't have a haul color on them, and that just means that I read them before I ended up hauling them. So I left them out of the haul because they were going to be in my wrap-up. You can also see that I've read quite a few of the books that I acquired in the last couple of months in the new year, and it does kind of follow that pattern as you go up. So the month that I acquired the books, I might have read one or two of them. If I got a book in October or November, I might have read some of those in December. Not all of them, though. I love the way it looks. It's really pretty. This one is really an enigma to me because I must have erased it somewhere, so I have to search back in my memory. I'm sure when I see the book, I will remember what it was, especially because it's in a stoop sale in Lake Ave. I feel like once I see that book, I'll remember. I also went through this spreadsheet and looked for books that I had gotten for my husband that weren't really for me, and I looked for books that weren't going to be on my TBR, not books that I was ever planning on reading anytime soon. So sometimes those are vintage Kurt Vonnegut or Agatha Christie books, and sometimes they're just cool sci-fi books that I found, but I don't actually plan on reading, whatever else it might be. Sometimes they're baseball books, which I have quite a collection of, but I have never made my full way through a baseball book. I guess the next most exciting thing to talk about is that although I acquired 393 books, I only spent $383.12. So that definitely works out to be less than $1 per book. And the majority of the books that I acquired, I did not purchase. I purchased 121 books out of the 393, which is only 30%. So although I acquired all those books, only 30% of them I paid for. And then we can also see the expenditure breakdown by month of what I spent per month. So the month that I spent the most on books was actually October, and that was because I did do a couple of big book purchases from online used bookstores. So I did make a couple of thrift book purchases, and those just add up. I also went to a few library sales that month, and although I don't spend very much at library sales on the whole, if you add those all together, it does. The least amount that I spent in a month was March, where I spent 99 cents, which means I paid for one book in March, and I got it from a Salvation Army because that's how they do their pricing. If we open up some of these tabs, we can see how many I hauled in a month. In some of the other hidden tabs that we have, I had started to do if I read the book on audio or if I could find it on audio. And then I had also started to go through to see what genre the books were, to see if it was a BIPOC author or an author of color, and to see if the author was queer. But I also didn't keep those updated. That was something in my mid-month or my mid-year check-in with this project that I thought I was going to continue. But honestly, I kind of tracked those either in my reading journal or I track them on Storygraph or Goodreads. And the other thing that I was tracking was if I unhauled a book, if I DNF'd them for the month, or if I just took them off, but I didn't finish tracking that either. That is something that I would like to finish tracking. So the fun stats is that my total hauled were 393. From those hauled, I only read 54 books. In total for the year of 2022, I read 135 books, but from the 2022 spreadsheet, I only read 54 books. And that comes out to 13.74% of the books hauled. I also, when I went through and took off books, I took off 21 books, which comes to 5.34%. So my total is 19.8%. That came off of the spreadsheet, either being read, being unhauled, being vintage, or being for someone else. Like I said earlier, the total number of books was 393, but the total amount of purchased books was only 121, which is 30.78%. So that means I got 272 books for free this year. You can see that I have my first year 2022, and I have continued to keep track of the books that I'm reading off my 2022 spreadsheet. If we look at some of these other tabs, you can see some of the books that my dad gave me that went to the basement and didn't come onto my TBR, and some of the books that my mom gave me that went to the basement and came off my TBR. Although this is an interesting one. I was wondering where this book came from, actually, because I did read in 2023, I have read Lev Grossman's Warp, and I couldn't remember where I got that. I've started to calculate my pre-2022 TBR, so I've started writing down every book that's on my TBR and arrived before 2022. I also have a tab for my Basement Books project, which we will talk about in a minute, and then I have my recently acquired books for 2023. So in the year of 2023, I am definitely going to still be keeping track of all my recently acquired books. I'm still going to be writing down every book that comes into the house, whether it goes on my TBR or not, except I'm not necessarily writing down the books my husband picks out. So if he picks out a book and it's his choice, then it's his book, and unless I'm planning on reading it also, it's not going to go on my TBR. So I will still have books that I pick up for him. I will still have books that are vintage, that go in my vintage collections, and I will still have books that I pick up and then realize that I'm going to unhaul almost immediately. I'm not even going to bother reading them. The goal for 2023 is to acquire way less books than I did in 2022, and it is to acquire less books than I read each month. So if I read 12 books in a month, then I should only be hauling at most 12 books and coming up with that net zero. This could count for reading books if I haul 15 books, but I've read 3 of them, etc., etc. Also, it doesn't necessarily go by month. If one month I acquire more books, but then one month I read more books, and it still nets out to 0 of the books that I've acquired and the books that I've read, I feel fine about it. I feel good about it. And so that's basically my project for 2023, is to acquire books at a much slower rate and to only acquire books that I'm really, really planning on reading pretty soon after or close to the time that I've gotten them. I have a lot of books that I got in 2022 that I haven't read yet, so I also need to be reading those. The other big change to my RAB project and my RAB spreadsheet in 2023 is I will not be doing recently acquired books videos. So I will not be doing a monthly video where I show you all the books that I got, hopefully because I won't be getting a lot of books and I will be reading those books, so I won't need to show you them. Also, I don't like book hauls. Book hauls are my least favorite thing to watch on BookTube, and I actually think that they're a bad habit that booktubers have in a lot of ways. I understand that we want to share our excitement over these books, and I understand we want to share books that maybe people haven't heard of, but I think that they are setting an unrealistic expectation for many people that you need to be buying books all the time, that you need to be getting new releases, that you need to be consuming when you're already consuming by reading. So I don't want to perpetuate that as much as I have done in the past. That's not to say that I won't occasionally check in and show you books that I have gotten, but it's not going to be haul videos in the same way. One of the ways that I am trying to read my books on my spreadsheet and to lessen the books that I bring in is by joining the Read What You Own challenge by Criminale. 2 years ago, Criminale developed this, and October and November of 2022, he continued this challenge to read a certain amount of books off your shelves before you get new books, before you acquire new books. So I will be doing that. My first round of Read What You Own is going to be to read 25 books off of my shelves before I acquire new books. Now, there are a lot of rules and caveats that go along with this. As you can see from my spreadsheet, I have acquired books since I started this challenge in mid-December, but they all followed the rules that I had. I will link the video down below where I go through all my rules. And as long as I have all my rules in place and I follow them, then after 25 books, I can decide if I want to re-up my challenge, which I probably will, or if I want to pause my challenge, acquire some books, and then restart my challenge again. So that's where we are for 2023. Those are the 3 main things on the agenda for the RAB spreadsheet and challenge in 2023. But there is another piece, and that is my basement box books. So I have probably 50 to 100 boxes in the basement that are full of books that I've acquired over the years. Like I said, I was always a book acquirer. I was always a reader. So I have hundreds, if not thousands, of books in my basement that I need to go through. Part of the 2023 RAB challenge is to bring up a box or 2 every month, go through them, and make some tough decisions. Decide to put them on my TBR, which would extend my TBR, extend my Read What You Own challenge, cause me to pick up less books in general and acquire less books because I will have acquired more books by going through the basement box books. Or if I need to unhaul them, if those years sitting in the basement have not made them any more enticing to me and they need to get unhauled. I will be doing a video soon on my basement box books. We'll bring up the first box, we'll see what we got. It'll kind of be like a haul video, but not exactly. Let me know what kind of challenge you've set for yourself, if you've set yourself a Read What You Own challenge or a similar challenge. I know Happy for Now is also doing a challenge like this, and many people in 2023 are trying to read off their shelves before they acquire new or new used books. Let me know if you're participating. Let me know what you think of my spreadsheet. Let me know if there's any data that I didn't state that you'd be interested in hearing. And thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.